Welcome to Africa Business Weekly, the premier source for business and financial news in sub-Saharan Africa. I'm your host, Akin Obakeye. My colleagues Tabitha and Karabo will join me as we track major business and finance news making headlines across the continent. In South Africa, the US has a new ambassador. What does this mean for the relations between SA and the US? Meanwhile, in East Africa, Ethiopia's national bank has kept its benchmark lending rate at 15% as it moves to stabilize inflation. And in West Africa, Niger's junta leader, Abdulrahman Tiani, has been sworn in as president for a transition period of 5 years. Quite a packed show, I must tell you, but let's cross over to Johannesburg and get updates from Karabo.
Well, thank you, Akin. Well, U.S. President Donald Trump's administration has nominated Leo Brent Boswell III, who is a conservative activist and writer, to be the country's ambassador to South Africa. This nomination was published on the U.S. Congress website and comes amid strained ties between the two nations. Analysts are concerned that a cooling of relations between SA and the U.S. may dim the growth outlook. Earlier this week, Stavros Nicolaou, who is a BRICS Business Council member, spoke to CNBC Africa's Anastasia Arensa for more.
The BRICS Business Council, as does the rest of organised business in South Africa, has a very clear posture that we anchor all of our discussions in what is in the best economic interest of the country. And in our instance, given where our economy is, given the geopolitics, the economic interest of our country and of business in general lies in the West, it lies in the East, and it lies in the South. And I think we have to at all times act in a way that says what is in the best interest of growing the economy, job creation, and alleviation of poverty. And we've got to be dealing with all sides here. So now that I'm rid of that disclaimer, yes, let me give you a sense of the last 2 months have been interesting, to say the least. We're not at 100 days yet, but what is very clear is that you can only deal with those elected officials that are before you, okay? And you have to adapt and adjust to the different styles and the different, I suppose, the different demeanors. And President Trump and his administration have got a very particular way of operating. They seem to be transactional. They seem to be following on their 2025 or following through on their 2025 vision. A very different way of communicating. I think diplomatic channels have somewhat been cast aside in favor of Twitter, formerly Twitter, now X. So there's a different way of engaging. Are the relationships strained? I think the relationships started becoming strained even at the end of the Biden administration, and there's been a carryover for a whole host of reasons. I think what's required at this point in time, before I go into the ambassador designate, what is needed is a cool, calm, and measured analysis on our side. I think we need to put away megaphones. They're not helpful. If the other side wants to have megaphones, that's fine, but I can't see the purpose in terms of who's got the loudest megaphone here. As I keep saying, I think we need to anchor our relationship, because you're dealing with a transactional administration, with where do the economic opportunities lie on both sides. I still think we can, despite the current set of circumstances, I think we can still as a country get to a position where there is some type of economic partnership. It's not going to be a goer. I think any safe bet right now would say, look, this is an administration that is bilaterally transactional. It wants to tariff you reciprocally on many occasions, and a goer was a tariff bias on one side and not on the other. So it's unlikely it would have survived anyway. And I'm not just talking about South Africa, but I'm talking about Africa. So I think we've got 6 or 7 months before this edition has to be reauthorized, unlikely to be reauthorized. And I think both as Africa and South Africa, we need to look at alternative economic plans. Now, very quickly on the ambassador designate, I think we've all done our reading up on him. He wasn't an expected candidate, to be honest. Is he in the Trump camp? Most certainly he is, but I don't think he was someone anyone a week ago was identifying. There's a couple of steps that need to happen. The first is with any ambassador designate, you present that person to the receiving country, which is South Africa in this instance. You have to get what's called an agreement, which is a type of an agreement. It's a French word. Yeah. And once agreement has been reached, the ambassador designate comes to South Africa. He remains an ambassador designate until he's presented his credentials to our president.
And in more news making headlines in the Southern African region, CNBC Africa's Godfrey Mthizwa spoke to Gainmore Zanamwe, who's a trade facilitation and investment promotion director at the Intra-African Trade Bank, about plans to launch a new initiative to boost investments in Africa at the landmark Intra-African Trade Fair in Algeria later in the year. Let's listen in for more.
At Afreximbank, we actually realized that there are a number of African investors, African companies that are willing to invest in other African countries, but they don't normally get the support that is typically given to foreign direct investors. So at Afreximbank, we actually undertook an initiative which we've been implementing over the past few years, whereby we started to analyze the trends in Africa direct investment, and we've now developed a framework for Africa direct investment. We discussed this framework with a number of experts at the previous Intra-African Trade Fair that we held in 2023 in Egypt, and we will now be launching this initiative at the IATF 2025 in Algeria from 4 to 10 September. We've done all the work and we are now ready to support African companies or investors to be able to actually invest in other African countries. Just to give you a practical example, picture, maybe it could be Dangote investing in Zambia, a cement plant. So a cement plant will actually then be supplying other countries in Southern Africa, but Dangote will need financing, will need a number of investment guarantees. At Afreximbank, we have those tools in terms of investment guarantees, project finance guarantees, to ensure that investors feel more comfortable investing in other African countries. The beauty about this initiative is that if it is Africans investing in other African countries, it is likely to be more sustainable because Africans are actually vested. And what we've actually seen over the past few years is that the Africans are likely to actually understand more the local settings. They are likely to do more, and when there are challenges, they also have got a way of actually dealing with those challenges. And we know that the Africa is only our home. When there are challenges, we don't run away, but we find ways of dealing with those challenges. So that's one of the initiatives that we're actually implementing.
Absolutely, and it's a brilliant one. And I've always been asking this question actually where I've moderated, whether we should actually favor African companies when we are saying we want to attract not the foreign direct investment, but obviously just investment in general. And I have been met with stares of, why would you do that? You know, you are providing favors to one group of investors versus another, you're discriminating. But as you say, we understand this risk better. So tell me, what kind of reception have you been getting in driving this idea of supporting African businesses investing on the African continent?
The initiative was actually received very well by a number of players that we've been working with. And first, when we actually launched it probably in IATF 2023, when we were discussing the framework, it was actually well received. But we've actually been refining it, especially the methodology of collecting the data. We've received a lot of support from investment promotion agencies as well as the business community. And we've now gone a level deeper by now, defining some of the challenges that African investors normally face. And we are now looking at measures to actually address some of those challenges. We always take a consultative approach whereby we listen to potential investors, we listen to the business people.
Yeah.
And the beauty is that we've now started a process of gathering projects from various African countries, from various investment promotion agencies.
And those were the business news making headlines for the region this week. It's back to you, Akin.
Many thanks for the update there, Karabo. Tabitha, what's the update from your region?
Hello, Akin. This week, Ethiopia's National Bank decided to keep the benchmark lending rate at 15% following its latest monetary policy meeting. This move aims to stabilize inflation expectations. CNBC Africa's Abi Agina was joined by Merit Fikira Johannes for further insights.
This is the second round of the Monetary Policy Committee to conduct their meeting. Initially, they did it on back December 2024. Yes, it was much more anticipated in terms of maintaining the policy rate of the national bank rate at 15%, and I think this would be the policy rate would continue. So the committee entails a few highlighted key points. First one is that since the monetary policy is in transition, because as part of the economic reform that the central bank has introduced is to transition the Ethiopian monetary policy into interest-based monetary policy. So still we are in transition phase. So as per that, and in order to curtail the credit growth, the Monetary Policy Committee has maintained the 18% credit cap on banks' balance sheet. That will continue in the foreseeable future. It used to be 14% a while ago, but recently, a couple of months ago, the central bank has revised it from 14% to 18%, and the committee has indicated that this will continue. And more importantly, inflation is somehow reducing. The aggregated inflation rate is hovering around 15%. The target goal is to see it in foreseeable future into a single digit. So all in all, the tightening of the monetary policy will continue, and that's the intention of the committee in the coming months.
All right, Mered, quite aptly captured. And finally, looking at the IMF program with Ethiopia, we've also seen the beer sort of playing a different tangent when it comes to how it's been performing. Just give me a quick update on this and what the central bank governor says concerning this.
Yes, so birr right now is hovering around for a dollar around 130 birr on average, right? And currently, the central bank has conducted an auction, a special auction, like almost a month ago, and that just pushed the rate around 135 birr for a dollar. That was the weighted average rate which the banks bought $60 million from the central bank. So somehow what you're seeing on the market is that the banks are charging a higher commission fees in order to disperse the dollar they have currently, even though the system has enough adequate foreign currency, they're charging around 7 to 10% the commission rate. So it's pushing a birr higher than what you see officially posted on the bank's daily exchange rate, right? So even within the Monetary Policy Committee, they have indicated that they're watching this development very closely, and and then at the same time, there is, as expected, we've seen non-food items prices has gone up, and we can see it in the real economy as well. So that's one of the main reasons that they want to maintain the policy rate at 15%. So the exchange rate is still moving. I think, in our view, in the transition of the monetary policy, and then at the same time, it has been recommended, and also that the credit cap will continue up to 18% up to September. So yes, there maybe after once the fully implementation of the new monetary policy, and once Ethiopia fully transition into interest-based monetary policy, I think probably would see a demand for a dollar. So that would potentially put a pressure on birr in the coming months, maybe after September, once the credit cap has been removed.
Up next, as global investments in artificial intelligence skyrocket, Africa remains largely positioned as a consumer of technologies developed in the global north. But there's a growing push to flip that narrative, and hence we ask the question, can Africa lead the next wave of AI development? I spoke to Shiko Gitao, CEO of Kala Limited, for more insights into this.
Africa has been a consumer, and we have been landed to be consumer because we don't have the ecosystem, a thriving ecosystem to enable AI to actually thrive. And by ecosystem, we define it by 5 key pillars. Talent, which you've mentioned. We also have infrastructure in terms of compute, supercomputer, digital infrastructure, but also foundational infrastructure like energy and power to run these computers. Number 3 is data sets. And data sets is a huge one because it is the foundation of all AI models. Africa has not been collecting data over time, which means that to be able to train these models, we are still lagging behind. And finally, market. People need to see where the money is coming from. People will not invest if they can't see where the money is coming from. So we need to create a market around it. And finally is governance. In the past 2 years, 3 years, we've been seeing a lot of African governments launching their AI policies and governance documents, but they remain just that. It's the institutionalization and structuring of these documents to bring to life that is needed. So these are the key things that are needed to bring AI to life. And it is a concerted effort between private and public sector.
Indeed, a concerted effort, an ecosystem that I see there. But what role are we seeing maybe local institutions playing here, and also the private sector in terms of bridging some of these gaps that we are seeing?
I've seen many African small organizations with very limited resources in terms of money being able to create models. There's the Nigerian data science in Nigeria. There's the Lelapa, which is down in South Africa. There's InstaDeep out in Egypt, and there's Makerere and Maseno universities in Uganda and Kenya that are building models. So these efforts, they are small, but there are many efforts that are happening. So the goal is to bring these small efforts and make a gigantic effort by coming together. We need to break our silos from working as small entities to one big entity, because that's how we win. Scale is what will win Africa, and I'm seeing that is happening. That is from like an academia, private sector. From a government point of view, is creating an enabling environment. And for example, in a couple of weeks, it's actually next week, there's a summit happening in Kigali that is trying to bring all these players together to see how do we make one single voice around AI in Africa. And just pulling these different threads is what is needed.
And with global investments in AI soaring, what's the business case for African governments and also private players to invest in homegrown AI research and model development?
Okay, so let me start with what's the business case for AI in Africa. So AI, like any other investment in Africa, needs to be justified by something. But we are sitting on a gold mine or a mine of data. Africa is the most untapped data set in the world. Right now, we only contribute to about 2% of the global contribution to data sets. And with this, we are able to shift how the AI is being built in the world. So the first thing is being able to create models that are African, because commoditization of models is happening in the next 2 to 3 years. Commoditization means that all these models you're seeing are going to be the foundation of the internet and how we communicate to each other.
Our curtains on East close now. Back to you again.
Interesting conversations from our coverage regions there. Now, the show won't be complete without feeding you with updates from West Africa. Now, after months of delay, Niger's junta leader Abdurrahman Etienne has been sworn in as president for a transition period of 5 years under a new charter that replaces the country's constitution. Now, this duration is flexible depending on security situations, the burden of reforms, and the agenda of the Confederation of Sahel States. George Arjen, political strategist at Arjen Associates, looks at the implication for ECOWAS and the alliance of Sahel states. Take a listen.
It's quite unclear, and it's really a step change in the way that African countries have organized themselves and even their forms of government. And don't forget, we are have always existed in this world of nation states and republics. All of these countries are essentially republics that have been formed less than 70 years ago. And now we're coming face to face with the legacy of colonialism. And it's no accident that not only Niger, but Mali and Burkina Faso have been on quite a different trajectory, having left ECOWAS, and even last week left the Francophonie. This is a huge blow to France and its influence on the continent.
And talking about the shift we're seeing here at this moment now, the fate of ECOWAS, and then how this is also introducing new dynamics to the formation of blocs and their relevance in today's matters. Would you say the scramble for Africa is over? You talked about the Francophonie influence here at this moment, but would you say the scramble for Africa is over?
It's very, 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 very far from over. If we look at the 20th century and we think about geopolitics in the context of oil resources, we can look at 21st century geopolitics in the context of mineral resources, and Russia has a stake in that. China has a stake in that. Even the Gulf countries are keen to invest, the UAE and Saudi Arabia, because they need those resources. Of course, the United States needs those resources. So whether it's Greenland, which nobody ever talked about before, is now a hot spot, and Africa is no different. So the scramble is far from over, and these countries like Niger know that, and they want their seat at the table.
And talking about the seat at the table and the relevance this bloc ECOWAS still wields at this moment, we have to take a look at the official exit which happened in January this year on the back of the exit announcement, the notification in January 2024 when we had Niger, Mali and Burkina Faso announcing their formal exit. But now with the terms around the junta-led states to still enjoy the right of visa-free movement, resident and establishment, how do you expect ECOWAS to move going forward on the back that we are still expecting some more elections this year? How certain or stable would you say the climate is around the west of the continent at this moment to still hold on to democratic principles?
I think we have to look at the democratic aspect separate from the economic aspect. It's all well and good to break away from ECOWAS and have a common passport for those three countries, but let's not forget they're landlocked countries. They require access to ports, and as we might discuss, the tension about overusing Cotonou and Benin as the port has been complicated, and so there will always have to be some sort of cordial relationship that facilitates economic exchange and trade, because those countries are landlocked. They don't have access to the ports, and the bigger countries and the bigger economic powers that we talked about just earlier need to have access to those minerals, which means they need to be able to transit them. So on the economic side, we will always have some sort of cooperation. And let's note, we talked about leaving the ECOWAS, we talked about leaving the Francophonie, but the CFA franc is still the currency. It's much, much more difficult to unwind the economic and even monetary ties from the political. So whether it is a military dictatorship or it is a democratic election, that will unfold in its own way which we can't predict. And the trend is not great if you're a fan of democratic elections that we have aspired to over time. But on the economic side, those links will not be severed so easily.
And in other developments, Equinix says it plans to expand with new data centers in Nigeria, as it also eyes broader African investment by 2026. Bruce Owen, the president of Europe, Middle East and Africa at Equinix, had a chat with Esther Awoniyi on the expansion plans in Africa. Take a listen.
It felt like a match made in heaven between Equinix and Main One. Just there was such good cultural alignment, such good alignment around, with the nature of our businesses. So the integration's gone well. We have now fully integrated, and what that brings is, a new customer set to Equinix. But what Equinix brings is we're the world's leading infrastructure company. We run 270 data centers in 35 markets. And so what this allowed us to do was to merge all of our customers together, and we brought 10,000 to bear. And so that merger has really gone well, and we're very proud of our presence here in West Africa.
And I know that for the Main One Solutions by Equinix, which is what it's called now, you will continue to focus on internet service provision and cable business. Talk to us about. Let's get into the more granular bits. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, so there's different elements to the business. There's a subsea cable which comes down and lands, and that brings connectivity from Europe into the continent. There's a connectivity business, and then there's a data center business, and all of those are very important to drive connectivity and economic growth into the region. And we're nurturing and growing them, and so we continue to invest. In fact, just over the next 2 years, we'll be investing $140 million into expansion of 2 facilities here. And that's just getting started. As soon as we see the demand signals, which we're starting to see from our customers who want to expand into the region, we'll continue to invest and grow here, not just in Nigeria, but we're in Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire, and we've recently entered the South African market too.
Right. Now, what I'm also hearing from what you're saying is a show of confidence in the Nigerian business environment, in the Nigerian economy. Where is this comfort coming from for you?
Yeah, we go where our customers want to go. And so we spend a lot of time sensing from our customers as to which markets they want to be in. And Nigeria is a very important market. And so we're starting to see a lot of our customers and cloud service providers wanting to enter this market, and that gives us the confidence, therefore, to expand. And I think further, the signals from the Nigerian government to say we want data center expansion here, we realize that it drives economic progress. And so it's those kind of signals that give us the confidence to continue to expand. And for us, we take long-term bets. It's sometimes there's these short-term influences around currency or those sort of things. For us, we take a much longer view and say we really believe in the long-term trajectory of what's possible here. And that gives us the confidence to continue to invest and grow.
I know for the rest of us, your customers, the rest of us who use the internet and devices enabled by connectivity and all of that. It's just we don't see what goes on beneath the surface. You and I were talking about how today is International Data Day, Data Center Day. Talk to us about the significance of data centers. Why is it so important for economic development? So to the extent that we see governments also sitting at the table with companies such as yours talking about how we want this to work. Why is it important?
Well, it is exciting to finally have a day, International Data Center Day. Who would have thought? And I think it's because there's this realization now that data centers are the engine room of the economy, that absolutely everything that we do in our lives that is digital is happening in a data center, whether you are doing online banking, whether you're trying to do any kind of online learning, whether you are connecting to emergency services online, whether you are a stock exchange, where even this broadcast, everything that we're doing that is digital is happening and transacting in the data center. And therefore, they are absolutely pivotal to economic progress. And governments are starting to realize the significance of that and therefore see data centers in a different light.
And that's where we draw the curtains on this episode. Thank you for joining us today. Until next time, stay informed and stay ahead with Africa Business Weekly. I'm Akin Obakeye, and we'll see you again, same time next week. Bye for now.